about when I get up really on it? Check, test, 1, 2, 1, 2. All right.
smoke with the football. You can, so you got that kind of football theme on, right? Yeah. You know?
Good morning.
What? Yeah, I think we're ready. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
No, go back. Go. Energy. Things are going well in the energy. Gotta count for those extra pounds I picked up during the holiday.
Hey, good morning.
Morning.
And we're really thrilled to have you here this morning. It's a little tight to get to know your neighbors really well over the next 2 hours, but we're thrilled to bring this esteemed panel together, really a cross-section of our community to really talk about the economic trends from their perspective. You'll have the opportunity to ask some questions, as well as our online audience. We are moderated today by our Vice President of News, Peter Kovacs. But before we get started, this day would not be possible without our kind support of our sponsors. And to bring Lou Hudson up, she's our Vice President of Sales for Major National. This event was her brainchild. So Lou. Here. We see a lot of faces that we know. We really appreciate you being here. This, as Judy said, would not be possible without our sponsors. And we have some great sponsors. ExxonMobil, Home Bank, Entergy, Vega, Bank Services, and they are our 2019 Economic Outlook sponsors. Really, really appreciate your sponsorship. First, I would like to introduce, we're going to hear from all of our sponsors, and I'd like to first introduce our refinery manager for ExxonMobil, Gloria Moncada. Good morning. We're very proud to help sponsor this important conversation. As part of the ExxonMobil Louisiana management team, we have a really exciting opportunity that we like to talk about. For many years, the petrochemical industry has really been about sustaining itself, and certainly for the Baton Rouge refinery, where we have the complex, where we have over 5,500 people employed. Our goal has always been to be able to stay competitive and sustain those jobs. But now we've got bigger opportunity. And that opportunity has come because of the revolutionary changes that have happened in the oil and gas industry, namely because of the low cost natural gas that's available in the United States, the development of the Permian Basin that provides oil at competitive prices, and then more globally, we think about developing countries and their need for energy and sustainable plastics around the world. That's growing, and we are well positioned in the Gulf Coast, the United States, to help provide that supply competitively. And that's why ExxonMobil has announced that we're going to be investing $20 billion in the Gulf Coast. The opportunity for us is to attract as much of that investment into our Louisiana facilities. As you may already know, there's a project we're looking at very seriously that's nearly $1 billion to expand our polypropylene plant. That's a significant investment, and it's going to be one investment that's chosen between our Gulf Coast sites, and we're pulling hard for that to be here in Louisiana. There's another project behind that that's also being looked at very seriously for the refinery, which is another expansion project of about that same size, or nearly that same size, that brings jobs and competitiveness and also positions us better to attract more investment into the Baton Rouge facilities. The investment is beneficial not just for ExxonMobil, but for the community. Think about the polypropylene project. We're talking about a small business resource center that would come with that. There's plenty of opportunity that comes when we are community partners. We're committed in Baton Rouge and Louisiana to being great community partners. And because of our significant capital investment, we're the largest taxpayer in East Baton Rouge and in fact the state. And when you think about corporate citizenship, investment is not just bringing, economic benefit to not just ExxonMobil, but to the city and state we operate in. But certainly, if you think about things like our contribution to the largest contributor to the United Way in the area, the free training that we give to our North Baton Rouge neighbors, and opportunities for employment with high-paying skilled jobs at the plants. These are all ripple effects and other opportunities that present themselves when investment comes through. So thank you once again, especially to the speakers. I look forward to hearing all the great insights, and I think these are exciting times for Louisiana. Thank you. Really appreciate your support. Also with us is the CEO and President of Home Bank, John Bordelon.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the Advocate for having us here. Very excited to be a sponsor today. Home Bank is very excited in 2018 to be celebrating its 110th anniversary as Louisiana's third largest bank. While many of you maybe haven't heard of us, we are headquartered in New Orleans, but we span the state, coming from from Lafayette to Baton Rouge, from Slidell to Jennings, all the way up to Vicksburg and Natchez. We went public also 10 years ago. We were able to ring the bell October 3rd to celebrate our 10th anniversary of going public, and that was a momentous occasion for us. Since that time, we've grown over 500% in assets to a $2.2 billion bank. As we have spread ourselves across the state, one of the things that's very important to us is the economic development that happens across the state. And while Baton Rouge is one of our strongest markets, we came into Baton Rouge about 10 years ago, and we want to continue to create a presence here for the people and businesses in Baton Rouge. We focus primarily on business. We want to have the tools, the financial tools, and the state-of-the-art technology that help them succeed and move forward. And that's our number one goal. To that goal, I'm very proud to announce that in about 90 days we'll be opening a new location here in Baton Rouge in the Long Form development. About 45 days after that, we'll be opening another location on Sherwood Forest. So we are very committed to Baton Rouge. We're very committed to Louisiana and helping this economy. We do feel that Louisiana is coming back. We feel that 2019 will be a very strong year, not just for banking, but for all businesses. We plan to hire more and more people that are talented, that can deal with the ever-changing rules and regulations of banking, and can help attract the wonderful companies that we bring into Louisiana to make us more successful. So we're very excited about 2019. We're very excited about this forum to begin with, and can't wait to hear the rest. On behalf of Home Bank and our 460 employees, we're very grateful for this opportunity. Thank you very much, and look forward to the remaining portion of the program.
Thank you, John. I will now turn over the program to Peter Kovac, our editor.
Thank you very much. It's great to see so many of you here so early. When I saw so many cars here so early, I thought we were going fishing together. And it's great to see the congressman. I know there's been there's some kind of wreck on I-10, and I think John George's is also on his way. I came to Louisiana 35 years ago from Alabama. And recently that wasn't something that you would want folks to know about yourself, but maybe after last night, the Alabama hating is going to calm down a bit. When I was in Alabama, I worked as a business reporter, and I discovered that being a business writer was tougher than I expected, because while the mayor has to answer your questions, the guy who runs the steel plant doesn't. So I'm happy to discover that 35 years later, the Advocate has lured these 14 great business leaders to be here this morning answering my questions and all of yours. We're reaching the end of a decade of great prosperity and progress here in Baton Rouge. Billion-dollar investments along our river seem like almost routine news. A generation-long dream of bringing commerce and leisure to downtown Baton Rouge is taking root. Medical construction is booming, and after a challenging decade, support for state government and, more importantly, higher education seems to have stabilized. At the same time, we're challenged because this prosperity is not evenly distributed across the parish. We need to be an economy where everyone feels like they have a chance to succeed, and by that measure, we've not made as much progress. But what will history say about 2019? We're fixing to find out from these 14 leaders, and we'll begin by running down the line, it's a long line, and asking everyone for a summary of the challenges and opportunities faced by the sector of the economy they deal with. And in the second hour, we'll take questions from me or the audience, both here and online. So we'll start with Brad Lambert, who is Deputy Secretary of Louisiana Economic Development. He's filled that role since 2016, and he was previously a Senior Associate at Harris DeVille, where he worked for 24 years. And at LED, Brad oversees business development and workforce operations, including Fast Start. So, be my guest.
Good morning and happy 2019. First of all, let me just thank the Advocate for undertaking and investing an event like this. So kudos to Judy, Peter, Lou, for what you've done to put something like this on it. I know a lot of planning has gone into it. And also it's a privilege for me to be part of such a distinguished group of individuals. In their own right, they're all community leaders, and we really thank them for the value that they add to our community, our region, and our state. I'll open by providing kind of a general outlook, maybe kind of a state perspective, and let others kind of fill in with their closer to home experience and expertise. So in that sense, I will try to give us a jumping off point going forward over the next 90 minutes or so. And I guess, Gloria, with apologies to you, we see Louisiana in 2019 as being well positioned. And well positioned, what do I mean by that? What we know is that the state has made considerable progress and is on the right track. And for a small state agency like LED of about 100 employees, we're proud of the contributions that we've been able to make to help the state get to this stable position. Stable and Louisiana in the same sentence, that's a good thing. Just like budget surpluses and Louisiana in the same sentence. Another positive, right direction outcome. Here's some of the data that support this progress. Since January of 2016, economic development projects are delivering more than 27,000 new jobs to our state and retaining another 19,000 jobs. Those sizable numbers are the result of 113 different economic development wins. For 2018, that breaks down to 44 projects, but in 31 different parishes. We're optimistic about 2019 because Louisiana is sustaining strong economic momentum. Since 2017, the state has enjoyed year-over-year job growth since that time in October 2017. We've added nearly 5,000 manufacturing jobs over the past year. Manufacturing jobs. Those are well-paying jobs with benefits that have considerable spin-off and multiplier effects. And certainly, Greg, thanks to many of the LCA member companies that are helping us achieve this notable manufacturing job growth. That kind of major project activity, highest level of construction employment, around 150,000 construction workers in Louisiana, and the Advocate last week reporting on the AGC survey that most construction firms, including those in Louisiana, also see a positive outlook for 2019. Employment's healthy with over 2 million people working. Wage growth, we've seen wage growth in every quarter of 2018, and our gross domestic product, the state's GDP, is at an all-time high of around $250 billion. So really, those are some of the reasons why we from LED and all of our partners, we believe Louisiana is well positioned for a promising future in 2019 and beyond. And I certainly look forward to hearing from the rest of the panelists this morning. Thank you very much.
King Alexander has been president of LSU since 2013, having served as president of California State University in Long Beach, which is one of the nation's largest public universities located in Southern California. He has represented higher education, colleges, and universities on numerous occasions before Congress on issues of college affordability, student debt, and institutional efficiency and effectiveness.
Thank you, Peter, and I'd like to thank the advocate for just pulling us together to throw these forecasts out. Adam Smith said in Wealth of Nations that the greatest asset a country, a nation, a state could have is not its natural resources. It's not coal, it's not water, it's not forestry. It's its people, it's the human capital. And unlike most of the businesses that are in here today, we are in the people, human capital business. And you rely on us to produce more and more graduates that can do what you need them to do to employ the ideas that are generated on our campus, that are generated off our campus with patents and other things. So we really are in a different sort of scenario. We are in the human capital business. We're also in a different scenario because we really don't have borders around our state when you're a national research university, which means the $500 million we generate in research-related activities, thanks in part to Congressman Graves and others in Washington, we have to go up against UCLA and Ohio State and Harvard and the rest of the national universities. And this is an intensely competitive environment that requires acquiring, getting, and gaining the best knowledge and the best people and keeping those best people. We're in the brain gain business, both as students and getting faculty and keeping faculty. So for the last 2 years, what a stable budget, not a fully funded budget, but it has been stable because we weren't cut. It's allowed us to go out and recruit 280 new faculty members. And they're coming to us from Oxford, from McGill University, from UCLA, from Wisconsin, Michigan, Harvard, Yale, the best universities in the world. And they're coming to us to plant seeds right here at LSU and in our community and grow our community and meet the growing demand of a competitive, even more competitive student environment, which, as we know, demographics show Louisiana high school graduates will be steady at best. So we've got to go out and compete with the best universities in the country to bring in and steal some of the best investments and talents from other states to bring them to our community so that we can use some of those resources and their talents to build our region and to build our economy. Those two areas are what make this university, LSU, so different. It's our research capacity to change lives, to impact lives, and at the same time, it's our ability, our competitive ability to go out and steal the best and brightest and bring them to our state to put them in school with our students at LSU. Yesterday, I spoke to 300 transfer students that were coming in, starting school tomorrow. About half of those were transferring from out-of-state institutions to Louisiana, of which most of those students would never set foot in the state of Louisiana if we hadn't have gotten them to come to LSU. One of them is from Ireland, a transfer student from Ireland, that we would not have in this state if we weren't the type of institution with a national and international reputation. So the competition for our talented young people has never been more intense within our boundaries, within our state, with all the money being thrown at our talented students. The competition for our own students has never been more intense, and the competition for students from out of state who are high achieving, who are going to build somebody's economy somewhere, has never been more intense. So we plan to grow strategically as a university. We have the capacity, not at the expense of any of our in-state students, but we need to grow and produce more educated graduates that are international graduates, national graduates, as well as our Louisiana students. So this strategic growth plan is not supplanting any student in Louisiana, and we intend to also supplement that with hundreds of new faculty that we'll bring in to ensure that we will continue setting graduation records, of which we just did a couple weeks ago, of every category. The largest graduating class, female, male, African American, Hispanic, first generation, veterans. We're going to continue breaking these records and supplying the type of talented students that we know in these growing areas, healthcare, cybersecurity, STEM and engineering, mathematics, and these are the areas we know that LED and others have said we really need to move up the meter and start producing the graduates and keep producing the graduates in numbers that this state and this region needs. So we're in a good position. We're now the aggressor on the national scene for faculty. We're now the aggressor for some of the top talented students in the country as well. So I look forward to working with many of you to keep that momentum going as we go forward. Thank you, Peter.
David Dismukes is the Executive Director and Professor at the LSU Center for Energy Studies and has been on the LSU faculty for more than 20 years. His research focuses on the analysis of energy and regulated industries, and his opinions on energy industry trends and issues have been quoted in the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, and I know he's a great friend of our business staff because I see him quoted at the Advocate a lot. He's probably the most quoted person on campus who's not a coach in the Advocate.
So thanks, Peter. It's good to be here this morning. I'm going to talk about probably one of the more boring sectors in our economy, which is energy, particularly today. 2018 was a great year, and it was the year that we thought we were going to start to see a big rebound in the oil and gas sector, particularly on the upstream side of the business. And we did up until about October, until the bottom kind of fell out over the right around Halloween, a little bit before Halloween, has continued to be a little bit low since that time period. Energy prices have gotten caught up in this big vortex right now and the uncertainty associated with economic and financial markets. And I think it's going to continue as we move through the next part of the first quarter. Markets were probably a little bought up as we were moving into October. I think prices were a little to the high side, and the correction was, I thought, bound to about happen by the end of the year, but nowhere near the kinds of corrections that we saw as we've moved through this year, and we continue even up to today. There's probably going to be a little bit of a readjustment, $3-5 a barrel in terms of looking at prices as we move into the first quarter. But as we move out beyond that, it's really tough. There are a lot of uncertainties out there associated with global growth, uncertainties associated with economic performance of the U.S. economy, which I think tends to be the strong point in the global economy right now. China is the one that creates big uncertainties associated with us because it's such a big export opportunity for the United States. The trade uncertainties that the Advocate has reported about repeatedly and the impacts and implications it has for Louisiana are going to be important for the sector overall as well. So it's certainly a big challenging time over the next several months as we look forward at least on the upstream side of the business and with commodity prices. On the midstream side of the business, and when I mean midstream, I mean in the petrochemical side, in the refinery side of the business. You heard Gloria talk a little bit about the investments that Exxon has made. A lot of other companies have made in this area. Brad talked about the tremendous amount of investment that we've had in the state over the last decade or so. Somewhere around $62.5 billion from 2011 to date, depending on how you count that. You go back to 2008, I think we're somewhere around $75 billion. And the projection as we move out forward looks real good, too. I mean, I think there's somewhere around $89-90 billion in announcements on a forward-going basis as we move out to 2030, and we can quibble about $10-20 billion here or there. 80 billion, or give or take 10 billion, is still a lot of money, right? However, as we look into the future, there are some concerns that I have in terms of this development. If you look at the historic development that we've had to date up till about 2018, it was about equally balanced between these large liquefied natural gas facility announcements that we've seen and our petrochemical facility development. In fact, a little bit less on the LNG side as opposed to the petrochemical and refining side. About 47% of that development was really associated with petchem and expansions and efficiency improvements, the kind of things that Gloria was talking about that keep these facilities much more competitive and raise their capacity production levels to world-class scales to meet these export requirements around the world and these big growth requirements. As you look at these announcements on a forward-going basis at $90 billion, most of that, 80% of that, is associated with more speculative investments on the LNG side, not on the petchem side. And that's problematic because that's a lot more speculative side of the business than, say, petchem or in refining. If you look at what I'll say, for lack of better words, kind of the discount factor associated with development probabilities on these investments, they're much, much higher on the LNG side than they are with the petchem or the refining side, so that's a big problem. The volatility associated with commodity markets also creates problems when you're trying to make big investments like this. Again, we're not talking about a couple of $100 million. We're talking about $1 billion, $5 billion, $10 billion, LNG facility around $9 to $12 billion. These are big things. And as Brad mentioned before, and I think it's a point that needs to get underscored repeatedly, so that people in our community appreciate, and that is certainty is very, very important when you're making very large capital investments. I don't care if you're in the utility sector, if you're in the pipeline sector, if you're in petchem, you're in refinery, it doesn't matter. And when you have uncertainties associated with where commodities are going, where you have uncertainties associated where policy and taxing changes are going, it creates a certain amount of inertia and kind of a pullback on making big capital investments. And so one of the things that I've seen is a lot of concern associated about continued investments here in the area. Some of the uncertainties associated with policies that have made other people start looking at other areas. It's important to emphasize that South Louisiana is a very important and attractive area to locate midstream investments, but it's not the only place. And if you don't believe me, go take a trip over to Corpus Christi and see what's going on over there. I've taken about 2 or 3 trips to see what is going on over there, and it's an amazing, exciting place. They are sitting in the back door of about 3 billion barrels of production a day. That's not something that we have here, and there's a lot of competitive advantages those areas have relative to here, and I think it's also something that we need to keep in mind as we start thinking about the investment profile in the future.
Darrell Byrd has been president and chief executive officer of Iberia Bank since 1999, growing it into the largest bank headquartered in Louisiana, with more than $30 billion in assets, $23 billion in deposits, and $22 billion in loans. The Lafayette-based financial holding company has 329 combined locations, primarily in southeastern states, including bank branches and loan production offices, title insurance, mortgages, and wealth management. So, thank you.
Peter, thank you. I'm glad to be here. And look, I want to start by thanking the Advocate for everything that you do for Baton Rouge and our state. As a bank, we really appreciate it. So I'm going to start the conversation with a few examples of the volatility all banks are facing and the challenge it creates. And by the way, Beth Ardwin got on to me and said I was being too negative when she heard my remarks yesterday. So I have to say something good. Well, I'll say that Iberia Bank's having a record year. And that 80% of the 10 analysts that cover us have us rated outperform, and 60% have us as their number 1 pick. So we're happy with that. But let's go back to Thursday of November 8th, when the 10-year Treasury hit a high for the year of 3.25. That was a 4-year high dating back to January 2014. For what it's worth, 10-year Treasury, and I think most of you know this, is often considered a proxy for the world economy. Also back in early November, most prognosticators, and I want to use that term fairly lightly, but those prognosticators were predicting a December rate increase, which happened, and they were also predicting 4 rate increases during 2019. David's already talked about the volatility in energy, so I won't go there. But if you go back to yesterday, the 10-year has fallen to 269. In fact, last Thursday it was 255. And those same prognosticators last week changed their minds and gave a 91% probability that the Fed will not raise rates in 2019 and, in fact, may drop rates at some point. In fact, there was a 50% probability last week that we'd see a rate decrease, during 2019. To me, this underscores the amount of uncertainty and the volatility of the markets and a level of uncertainty relative to our economy. Now that doesn't seem odd. Doesn't that seem odd? Because I've kind of stepped back and I'm like, we've got a 3.7 to a 3.9 kind of unemployment rate, and I hope I look younger than I am, but that's the lowest I can remember in my career. So something has to be going right about the economy. But this stuff matters. For banks, it matters. We saw bank stocks fell by about 20% in the 4th quarter of this year, of 2018, so over the last 90 days. And the market has clearly priced in uncertainty in bank earnings. We've seen downward revisions in 2019 EPS estimates, mostly driven by higher credit costs going forward. Again, expectations that we're going to see some kind of correction. But it's not just credit, as the market is predicting, and we're seeing slower loan growth, kind of in the mid-single-digit range. The market is also concerned about rising deposit betas. Deposit beta is kind of a term used to express rise at deposit pricing. So slower asset growth loans, higher deposit pricing mean lower net interest incomes and lower margins for the industry. So the market is somewhat unhinged. I'd kind of describe it as a little schizophrenic. But we know that rates matter, and we know it matters going forward. And, we're kind of in the longest post-war recovery. And so we've got to see a correction at some point. So when you're running a bank, what does it mean to you every day? Well, we've seen heightened payoffs. And I tell our lenders, look, that's natural if you think about where we are in the cycle. The secondary market has kind of come back, and rates are going up, so our developer friends should be moving their money out into the long-term markets. And also, as the Fed raises rates, we're going to see deposit costs going up. Those are normal. So what can we do? As I tell our people, what we can do every day is take care of our clients. If we focus on our clients and our prospective clients, and we add new clients and do a good job for our clients, over the long term, we're going to be okay. So that's kind of where I see the banking industry right now.
Thank you very much. Terry Fontenot is president and CEO of the 350-bed Women's Hospital, which is the largest birthing and neonatal intensive care health system in Louisiana, specializing in obstetrics, newborn, and women's cancer care. And what could contribute more to our economy than producing more Louisianians? She oversaw the development of the $340 million replacement campus that opened in 2012, and she served as the 2012 chair of the American Hospital Association. So,
thank you very much. It's such an honor to be here with all of you. Thank you as well to want to express my appreciation to the Advocate and all that you do for the business community and the broader community as well. I'm honored to be asked to talk to you about the healthcare sector. It's so broad and deep, and it affects every one of our lives in a variety of different ways, certainly with our families, and as employers, business people, we care a lot about what goes on with the economic part of healthcare as well. So it's really a privilege to be up here on this panel, which with such well-accomplished business thought leaders, and of course with all of you. I see many friends in the audience. I have several board members here, so this may go on my performance evaluation. We'll see. I have some former board members, and I bring that up primarily because as a community hospital, we are so blessed to have the support of our community, both our business community as well as the patients that we serve. So I'm going to talk a little bit about healthcare, and you know, it's one of those things that can be a blessing or a curse, I guess. In healthcare world, scholars, business executives, and government officials also often debate whether healthcare is an economic driver or an economic drain. I actually had the opportunity to pose that question to Alan Greenspan once, and he gave me a really long answer. I don't know what his decision was, but that's a really smart man, as you know. The U.S. spent nearly 18% of its GDP on health care in 2017. On average, the cost of health care, which includes insurance, pharmaceuticals, tests, treatments, physicians, hospitals, home health, residential living, assisted care, it's a long list of things that go into the health care equation. On average, though, last year was $10,739 per person in the United States. It's more than double what it is in any other country, and we've heard that over and over. Louisiana hospitals are significant economic engines, both in their communities and statewide. Last year, hospitals generated more than $31.6 billion in economic activity. Several billions more were invested in construction, major equipment, and related business services. The healthcare sector is the largest employer in Louisiana collectively. It provides nearly 300,000 jobs and accounted for 15.5% of total state employment. These jobs produce $13 billion in payroll and $1.7 billion in state and local taxes. And healthcare employment continues to grow. It's been an average of 1.5% annually, and I believe that it's going to continue at that pace or likely accelerate. In the Baton Rouge area, there are nearly 50,000 healthcare workers and another 30,000 indirect jobs. And growth locally is also expected to be at a faster pace than the state and the nation. Healthcare construction, we see it everywhere. Peter mentioned it. It also continues to be robust, and in 2019 there will be 2 new local hospitals to open, the Lakes Children's Hospital and Ochsner's new facility. Baton Rouge General just announced that they were planning a micro-hospital in Gonzales. That's a 10-bed inpatient facility with but a lot of outpatient support. Numerous outpatient clinics, urgent care centers, physician offices, senior living centers, the list goes on and on. They're also under construction. And then Women's will be breaking ground very soon on Matera, which is our commercial and residential mixed-use development that's centered on wellness. So this demand continues to be fed by the aging of the population and primarily baby boomers who are more active and healthier and expect to be healthier than their parents were at that age. Average life expectancy increases due to demand for advanced medical treatment, new technology, new drug therapies, better management of chronic illness, and unfortunately the decline in the health of the population due to unhealthy lifestyle choices. Demand also increased significantly following the passage of the Affordable Care Act. It provided access to health insurance to people who had been unable to purchase it previously. Maybe they had a pre-existing condition, they were considered high risk, or they simply just couldn't afford the premium. Many uninsured had also postponed medical care, so when they had access to health insurance, then there was a bottleneck of care that needed to be released, and so they sought care to take care of illnesses that they had not previously been able to afford to have taken care of. So the number, as a result of the Affordable Care Act and the expansion of Medicaid and the availability of insurance exchanges, the number of uninsured has declined in our country by over half, and it's right now about 8.8%, which is extremely low. In Louisiana, 474,000 people who had previously been uninsured were able to get on either Medicaid or access insurance through insurance exchanges as well. When we expanded coverage, we were the 31st state in 2016. So this increased demand is expected to continue, which will certainly fuel capital expenditures and create jobs. So that's the economic driver prediction. But as far as being an economic drain, healthcare premiums continue to increase, which puts a strain on employers' budgets. Pharmaceutical costs are by far the fastest growing component of medical services. But the most significant contributor to preventable medical costs is the poor health status of our citizens. Louisiana leads the nation in obesity. We're in the top decile in rates of HIV, smoking, substance misuse, and sexually transmitted diseases. These lifestyle choices contribute to avoidable demand for care. And unfortunately, state and federal governments fund the majority of this care, which directs money away from other needed services. The healthcare sector is working really hard to help people lead healthier lives and reduce the cost of medical care without negatively impacting access or quality. And I am more confident and more enthusiastic than ever that we'll continue to be a catalyst for economic growth and positively contribute to a healthier Baton Rouge. Thank you.
Matt McKay is president and CEO of the All-Star Automotive Group, which he founded in 1987. He began working in the auto industry part-time in high school, and today his automotive group includes 13 different brands across 10 locations in Baton Rouge, Denham Springs, and Prairieville. He also champions educational initiatives in the Baton Rouge community.
Good morning. As I sit here and all the people in here, I see a lot of cars out in the parking lot, and I see a lot of traffic on the interstate, and so I think things are pretty good for the automotive piece. Thank you, the newspaper, please, for recognition for having us here. This is an interesting group of people up here. I'm honored to be up here in this group. Did start the first dealership in 1987. First day of business was October 19th, 1987. Anybody remember what day that was? Day of the stock market crash. So I figured one way when I got home that night, I said, there's only one way to go, and that's up. So I've been blessed. Had a wonderful partner for a number of years, John Nolan. A lot of people know who John is, and I bought John out, probably planned a program that we did probably about 6 or 7 years ago, but what a wonderful gentleman for this community. The biggest challenge we have today is automotive technicians. You know, I'd just challenge everybody to go out there. Most people don't do this, but I'd like you to open up the hood of your car. It's a lot of technology, computerization. So the days of having somebody, come home and got oil and grease and everything, all of them, those days are pretty well gone. So so much of it's diagnostic. So we spend a lot of time with the chamber, the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board, the Baton Rouge Area Foundation, a lot of people to work together. So we've been able to create a high school called C-Tech, which just opened up, and it does have a piece of that is automotive based. And then we also have the Automotive Training Center, right behind Bon Marché. Everybody live here long enough back in that area. It's a beautiful piece of property that we're using. And we wound up building a $25 million auto training tech situation. And we're working that with the community college. And then just got $6 million and opened up a body shop paint, latest and greatest technology. So what's great about that is the manufacturers are providing us with equipment. We had a wonderful budget with the state. And what we did with the equipment manufacturers is we bought the equipment going in, but their agreement with us is they will update all the technology as it changes on their nickel, not ours. So it's a great investment by the state, and it really has a tremendous upside. So,
Thank you very much. Greg Bowser is president of the Louisiana Chemical Association, which represents more than 60 chemical manufacturing companies across Louisiana. He worked for the LCA and its affiliate, the Chemical Industry Alliance, since 1991. And he succeeded our dear friend Dan Bournet at the Chemical Association, but not in the announcer's booth at LSU.
Thank you, Peter. I want to thank you and the Advocate for putting this on. I'm very honored to be here, and I was a little concerned about whether or not I was going to make it. I stayed up late last night, not preparing my remarks, but watching a football game, and I didn't know whether to be happy or sad, because all my former friends around me were extremely excited, and none of them went to Clemson, so I can't figure it out. Thanks very much. This year, Louisiana began to emerge from a 28-month recession. According to most economists, the state is poised to regain many of the jobs lost during that period for one key reason: the prosperity of our chemical and industrial sector. Louisiana's chemical industry is the #1 provider of jobs in Louisiana State's manufacturing sector. The companies that have invested here support more than $79 billion in annual sales for Louisiana businesses and contribute more than $1.1 billion yearly to Louisiana's treasury. The good news for the citizens of Louisiana is that for every job created in the chemical industry, more than 8 jobs are created elsewhere in our state. These are the small business owners, construction professionals that build our communities. The chemical industry is also key to building the economies of our parishes. Every year we contribute nearly $960 million to local governments. This alone is enough to fund salaries for over 40% of Louisiana's public school teachers. The industry is poised to grow, but only if we make good decisions about making Louisiana a better place to invest. There are nearly $90 billion in potential new investment and thousands of jobs at stake. You heard Dr. Dismutes mention some of that. Challenges both locally and nationally may diminish our competitiveness and could severely impede our ability to bring these projects to fruition. This means fewer jobs, less money for things like teacher salaries and law enforcement. Every day we are competing for industry investments against states like Texas, which has the same natural resources as Louisiana, but with a more predictable, business-friendly tax structure. Louisiana, on the other hand, is riddled with uncertainty and instability. But there are things we can do to change this. First, we need to regain the confidence in our state's most important economic incentive, the Industrial Tax Exemption Program, ITEP. Recent changes to the program and a negative rhetoric have impaired its value and stifled growth. Until we add predictability to ITEP, it is far less likely that companies looking to invest will see its merit or even receive the incentive. As we've seen, chemical companies will be much more likely to choose other states who have better economic incentives and tax structures for new investment. Issues on the national landscape will also affect these potential projects, including the proposed tariffs on steel and aluminum that will make materials, equipment, facility construction more expensive, providing a disincentive for chemical companies to invest in Louisiana and in the United States. In order to reap the benefits of billions of dollars in new investments in the coming years, it is vital that we do everything we can to make sure Louisiana is an attractive place for business to invest and grow in an increasingly competitive world. Regaining confidence in the ITEP program and lowering the economic barriers for investment are the keys to creating a healthy economy and a strong communities. we have to make sure that we're focused in on, you heard Gloria and you heard some others talk about the amount of investment potential that's going to be put into the Gulf Coast. We have to be competitive, and that's one of the things that we have to learn in Louisiana. This is not the only place people can invest. An investment will move. If we continue to make it complicated and demonize the people who are making investments, that's going to continue, and we will not be competitive with other states. One of the things that last night's football game taught me and should have taught everybody else is that nobody has a corner on talent or the market. Upsets can happen at any time. I look forward to working with all of you to make sure that Louisiana and the chemical industry can reach its full potential. Thank you.
Bobox is President and Chief Executive Officer of Bobox Commercial Real Estate and has been involved in the commercial real estate industry in Baton Rouge since 1993. He launched his own commercial real estate firm in 2005 and now has offices in Baton Rouge, New Orleans, and Lafayette.
Thank you, Peter. I'd like to thank the advocate and John Georges, who unfortunately can't be here. I guess he's still stuck in traffic. Good. Ed, Peter, and the staff, thanks for having us. The advocate asked me to speak on the state of commercial real estate and kind of give everyone a summary of what's going on in Louisiana and Baton Rouge and South Louisiana in particular as it relates to commercial real estate pricing and trends. I think one of the most common questions that I get asked by business owners is what's going to happen to retail in 2019 with the malls and the strip centers and the Amazon effect. I think that's probably the most common question that we are asked, and what's the state of retail as it relates to commercial real estate rates and development, land prices, construction prices. If you had asked me back in 1995 what the state of retail was, I would have told you it was fantastic. We could lease a strip center in 60 days. We'd have a list of franchise-driven, small, local businesses and soft goods, gifts, products, real retail, and maybe one restaurant. Fast forward to today, there's not really any soft goods, apparel, retail left in the small shop retail unanchored market. The category killers are basically, there's one, that's Amazon. But retail has changed drastically. Today it's more about entertainment and food. Our firm represents Target, Home Depot, and AT&T statewide. Our newest client is Topgolf, and if you can look across the interstate and see that Topgolf is set to open, I hope this week, knock on wood. So that is the new face of retail as it relates to commercial real estate. I don't it's full of gift shops and tanning salons and nail salons. We'll see more entertainment-oriented strip retail like Topgolf and food. You can't email somebody a cheeseburger. You got to go and get it and buy it and eat it. So I think we'll see people developing entertainment-oriented retail with food. That's the biggest trend, I think. And the other question is, what's going to happen to the Mall of Louisiana and Cortana? Mall of Louisiana has healthy sales per square foot. Lakeside has one of the highest sales per square foot in the country on veterans. Cortana Mall, we've had a lot of activity with the JCPenney box, which we sold and we've relisted, but all that activity is non-retail. It's warehouse, office, college, medical, distribution. So retail is changing, I think, for the good, but it's not dead. The retail vacancy rates are only 9%, so retail vacancy rates are stronger than it would appear. The land pricing and industrial sectors are probably poised to grow and be the strongest throughout the next 2 to 3 years, primarily because of cheap natural gas. Formosa is building a $2 billion plant and has just assembled, I think, 1,100 acres of land, and that's just one of the many industrial projects that's going on in Louisiana right now. So the industrial vacancy rate is only 6%. So I think the strongest sector in 2019 will be industrial, and rates we feel like will continue to rise, and the vacancy factor will get much tighter in newer product, industrial.
Okay, thank you very much. Philip May has been president and CEO of Entergy since 2013. His company serves more than 1 million electric customers in the state. The New Orleans-based parent company, Entergy Corp., is one of only 2 Fortune 500 companies headquartered in Louisiana with $11 billion in revenue. One of the things, I was telling him this, one of the things I learned when I was a young business writer is that the bankers and the lawyers and the real estate people always know what's going on, but the big secret is that the energy people also, the utility also knows what's going on, because whatever it is, they're going to have to power it. So,
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to meet with all of you today, and also for the opportunity to sponsor this great program. It's rare that we have such a diverse group of business and community leaders gathered in one place to talk about the future of Louisiana. You know, one thing I want you to know is Louisiana is leading the way in terms of economic growth along the Gulf Coast. And there's 3 things I want you to remember. In terms of what's driving the growth, 1, we have the lowest electric rates in the U.S. That's driving the second highest growth in industrial sales over the past 10 years. Second highest only to North Dakota. North Dakota starts from a fairly small base, so it's pretty easy to double when you start from a small base. And then that also contributed to the highest per capita foreign direct investment of any state in the nation over that same period. So things are going well in Louisiana, and it's being driven by those low natural gas prices, great infrastructure in terms of pipeline, deep water ports, those kind of things, important to energy intensive industries, but it's also a great workforce and those low energy prices. You know, the thing that we focus on in Louisiana, as you mentioned, oftentimes when a new business comes to Louisiana and we are often in the room in their first meeting with Louisiana, because energy is an important, a critical part of what they do in the state and so forth. And so we are keenly focused on what we can do to improve the opportunity to bring businesses to Louisiana. One of the ways we do that is through charitable contributions. Last year we gave $8 million in charitable contributions, with much of that focused on education and literacy, because having a highly educated workforce, a capable workforce, ensures that we can attract new businesses and so forth. A big part of that in 2016, we committed $5 million to workforce development across our service territories, Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, and Texas. Again, that is focused on driving economic development. Probably more so than any other business you know, our business is tied to the economic outcomes of regions we served. Our pipes are buried in the ground. Our poles are nailed into the ground. So it's not like we can take up and say, well, if this area is not really working well for us, we'll just take our pipes and wires and go somewhere else. We have to improve the region that we serve. Some of that workforce development, for instance, in North Louisiana, we're sponsoring with our technical colleges C4M, Certification for Manufacturing. One thing that we learned when we were trying to attract manufacturing business to North Louisiana, we didn't have enough employees or employable base in that particular profession. So Louisiana put together a program in partnership with our technical colleges to create more employment in that region so we can attract an assembly plant or something like that. If we do that, it could forever change that entire region as a result of new opportunities that come there. Also, I want to make sure that we note that Louisiana, Entergy Louisiana itself is a fairly large economic impact for the state. Over the next 3 years, we're going to spend more than $4 billion on energy infrastructure. Those things will focus on generation, transmission, and distribution. For example, we're building 2 new plants under construction. One will start operating later this year, St. Charles Power Station, and another one in Lake Charles Power Station. Those plants together, they're about $1 billion investment, but they will produce more than $2.3 billion cumulatively and net benefits to our customers as a result of the low energy cost, the new efficiency, and higher reliability that we gain from those plants. Investment in transmission infrastructure to improve reliability, improve the economics, to keep our low rates competitive as we go forward. And then increasingly, we're investing in new technologies. We're rolling out advanced meters so customers can understand their bills better, so we can know when the lights are out, provide higher reliability and service and so forth. You know, we've heard about advanced technology, the Amazon effect and so forth. You know, and increasingly we're seeing Amazon as a competitor as well. And it's competitive from a point of view of the expectations of what customer service is today are quite different than they were before. And they're different because Amazon has reset the expectation. You want to know all along the way, when you buy that package, where is that package? When is my package coming? You know, one of the things, I don't know if anybody got packages from Amazon over the Christmas break, but they actually take a picture at your front porch where they put the package, which is incredible. Again, resetting the bar, and we need to learn from that and invest in those technologies. The last thing I want to note is that we are successful because of the outstanding partners we have. Louisiana Chemical Association, an outstanding partner for growth. The Louisiana Economic Development, and of course BRAC as well, all helping for us to be successful. I want you to know that Louisiana has a very bright outcome, very bright outlook. We're doing well, and we intend at Entergy Louisiana to do everything we can to keep our rates low, competitive, reliability high, and customer service high as well, so we continue to attract new economic growth to the state of Louisiana. Thank you.
Emile Bro has been president and CEO since 2015 at Associated Grocers, which supplies more than 200 independent grocery stores in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas. He's been with the company since 1994.
Well, thank you, Peter, Lou, the entire Advocate staff. I think it's through these types of forums when we can all get together and talk about the challenges as well as the opportunities that exist in our businesses. It certainly gives us a better understanding of how we can all work and play better together and grow our communities to the benefit of everyone. So again, thank you for that opportunity. The grocery industry, while as mundane as that might seem, I know holds a special place in the hearts of us from South Louisiana. We have a culture of food here, and it kind of rolls into family, and again, it establishes kind of the basis of who we are in our culture. And while it may seem simplistic, if you really want to muck up the works there and make things complicated, I'd invite you over to 8600 in Selmo Lane, and I'll show you just how complicated we can make it. When folks ask me what I do, I tell them I sell peas, beans, and corn. When I was trying to prepare my remarks for today, I said let's try to simplify this, and let's pick on maybe the top three issues that as we see it going forward. And I'll limit those comments really to things like transportation, the labor challenges that I think we all as business owners face, and as several of the panelists have mentioned already, the impact that e-commerce is having on not only our business but our lives in general. In terms of the transportation industry, and those who are in that industry in the room, that's a big component of what we do as a distributor of food products to supermarkets. In the independent supermarket world, it's almost doubly challenging in that you're dealing with independent businesses, so we don't necessarily get to dictate to those stores when they're going to receive delivery. So typically in our world, we've got an awful lot of capital deployed to make deliveries in a very short window of time, typically between the hours of 4:30 in the morning and 7 a.m. in the morning, and then hopefully retrieve that fleet. But then you have a lot of idle assets sitting over there in terms of our outbound delivery. You may remember last year in 2017, it's already 19, in December of 2017, the Department of Transportation issued an electronic log mandate for large commercial carriers. And what that did is place just this extraordinary amount of pressure on the transportation system. Some of the estimates that we understood at the time was that roughly a third of all freight that was on the road that were not necessarily maintaining precise or accurate electronic logs, they were running illegally. Maybe not accurately depicting on paper logs the amount of time that the driver or the equipment had been on the road. When that mandate went into place, it immediately put a vacuum into the transportation system. And what does that mean to you? Let me give you an example. There were freight loads coming off of the West Coast for produce. We bring fruits and vegetables in from the West Coast, and those loads were running at the time roughly about $3,000 for a truck to run into Louisiana. That same truck today can cost upwards of $7,000. So a big impact that's had on our industry, and it certainly had on you as consumers. Labor, it's kind of a corollary to the freight. Our industry relies very heavily on unskilled and semi-skilled labor. And finding quality labor in a tight labor market, when folks have a lot of options, that obviously means you're paying more for it. There's a lot of turnover in dealing with all the costs that are associated with that. So if you're in an industry where you deal with a lot of turnover, you understand that the 60 or 90-day training period, and then you have a 6 or 9 month turnover on that employee, certainly contributes a lot of cost into a system. So while we may not be seeing inflation per se at the raw commodity level, I'm talking about beef, pork, poultry, and all that, you are seeing some level of inflation in consumer pricing just because of the raw input costs, whether it's transportation or labor. And then there's the e-commerce effect. I'd love to tell you I know where all that's going. I heard you can't email a cheeseburger, and that's absolutely correct, and that's probably the best news for our business, that in many cases the grocery store will be alive for many years. I know, Bo, you probably hope that we're still renting space from you as time goes on. But I do believe that e-commerce is inevitable. We've been pursuing e-commerce on the food side since 1997. We hadn't figured out how to make money at it yet. Jeff Bezos, really bright guy. I don't think he's figured it out yet either. But it's coming. And I believe that that's going to be, if not the largest challenge, certainly one of the larger challenges that we face going forward. So again, Lou, Peter, thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I look forward to the other comments from this group.
Donna VR is the owner-broker of VR and Company Real Estate in Prairieville. She gets the award for most heroically getting here on time. She was the 2018 president of the Greater Baton Rouge Association of Realtors, and she founded her business in 2004.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and I am truly honored to be here, to be sitting with all these leaders here at this table, and I'd like to thank the advocate for having me here as well. And like you said, I am the 2018 president of the Greater Baton Rouge Association of Realtors, and on Thursday, I passed the baton to Matt Hughes, who will become the 2019 president. And according to the Baton Rouge Association of Realtors, home prices were consistently up in most markets in 2018, but at reduced levels compared to recent years. High demand for few homes for sale, few price increases, but evidence is mounting that inventory will finally improve in 2019. This may apply some downward pressure on prices for beleaguered home buyers. A fourth interest rate hike by the Federal Reserve in 2018 spooked the stock market to close out the end of this year. The Fed has indicated that the number of rate increases in 2019 will be halved, which may be of little comfort to an already compressed consumer. Pending sales decreased 2.4% from 2017 to 2,108 for the quarter. Closed sales decreased 12.7% from December 2017 to 2,173 for the quarter. Sales were down compared to last year, bearing out the widespread notion that buyers are more willing to wait for price breaks at a time of lowered housing affordability. Prices were up compared to this time last year. The median sales price increased 2.8% to $203,500. Price increases were common from month to month in 2018, but that may change soon in 2019. Inventory levels market-wide increased Inventory levels market-wide increased 12.4% to 4,042 units. National inventory is beginning to perk up, and this is also the case locally. Months supply of inventory was up 18% to 4.6 months. Months of supply increased, staying ahead of what is shaping up to be a national shift toward more inventory. Percent of list price received at sale remained a flat 97.6% since last year. Unemployment rates remain remarkably low again in 2018, and wages continue to improve for many U.S. households. It is generally good for all parties involved in the real estate transactions when wages grow, but the percentage of increase on average has not kept up with the home price increases. This created an affordability crux in the second half of 2018. Housing affordability will remain an important storyline in 2018, and the real estate market here looks positives. Along with Matt, we agree that health care, lower wages, and tariffs could also prove to be a major factor influencing home buyers this year. Even with those concerns, we are looking forward to a busy and promising 2019 and the greater Baton Rouge area real estate market. Thank you.
Movige founded General Informatics nearly 18 years ago and turned it into a regional IT solutions company with a mix of national and international clients. In 2018, he opened a $20 million corporate headquarters and technology campus at the intersection of Highland and Bluebonnet that will house businesses, retail, and residences to support the creative class of Baton Rouge.
Thank you, Peter. It's a privilege to be here today, and it's an honor to represent the tech sector. And it's interesting to hear that a lot of people are talking about how tech is affecting their industries, and the talent issue always comes in. So. Representing the tech sector is always tech people always talk about terms and buzzwords, and whether it's disruption or transformation, and those things are being spoken in a lot of C-suites these days. So I'm going to add one more to the lexicon there. It's democratization of technology. And what the democratization of technology really means is that the digital economy is really creating an equalizer. And that's one of the concerns we've heard from the panel today. The reason it's possible today is because a lot of these big tech companies, whether it's the Googles and Microsofts, are creating these massive cloud infrastructures. They're investing in talent to create a lot of interesting algorithms, machine learning, which is really replacing the experts, or will be replacing the experts very soon. And the best part is that they are actually sharing that for a fee with a lot of businesses. And that's where the term the democratization of technology is coming. Because whether you are a small startup with very little resources, with a good idea, you can tap into this massive cloud infrastructures. You can rent these algorithms and implement your ideas. And if for the established businesses, the term transformation comes in, because this is the time to rethink your businesses. In 1990s, Michael Hammer came with a seminal paper, Re-engineering the Corporation, which, when the computers were coming in, that almost created the next 20, 30 years of boom of productivity in the U.S. industry, because everybody was started applying computers to solving problems. And we're seeing the same level of transformation happening today, especially with AI. Now, internet came 30 years ago. We're already hearing about how the e-commerce changed, how the real estate changed because of that, and how other things are changing. So now with the AI, when even the expertise of people can be captured and used, it almost creates another challenge and an opportunity for places. Now, the reason I'm talking about democratization here is because it creates an interesting point, an inflection point even for states like Louisiana. Traditionally, we've been considered not the tech states, but now we don't have to rely on the infrastructures which the other advanced states have in the past. So we can tap into the same pools, we can tap into the same algorithms, and the two things which you need really is, number one is imagination of our leaders, the imagination of our managers to come up with use cases where this thing can be applied, and second is talent. So that, coming back to talent, we heard what LSU is doing, and always feel like sometimes perception kickstarts reality. And I think the whole what Chamber did and what LED did, bringing IBMs and the EA Sports and this year DXC wins, was not so much about creating jobs. What it has created is, if you see the steady growth of tech talent in Louisiana. So as a technologist, we can see that that's happening, and that's going to affect us in a positive way in Louisiana. Now, so what is the forecast for Louisiana for we are in a better place than we were 20 years ago. In 1999, when internet was happening, we kind of got left behind. Some people, like Shopper's Choice, were able to take advantage of that, but not many people did. We have the same opportunity again. We are better placed. We have talent coming out. I think it's the time for leaders to come up with bigger imaginations and think big. Thank you.
Chris Tyson took over as President and Chief Executive Officer of the East Baton Rouge Redevelopment Authority in January of last year. Since 2010, he's been a professor at the LSU Paul A. Beer Law Center, focusing on property, real estate development, local government law, and urban land use and development. And he's the last LSU guy on the panel. They're well represented.
Good morning. Thank you, Pete, and thank the Advocate staff for having us as part of this program. This is a great way to kick off 2019, and I appreciate you considering the Redevelopment Authority worthy of being a part of this program. As was mentioned, the Redevelopment Authority, I have in the last year taken over as head of the Redevelopment Authority, and we have been reviving the agency. We're in our 10th year of operations. And while that is exciting for Baton Rouge, it is actually relatively young when we think about redevelopment authorities nationally. New Orleans Redevelopment Authority just turned 50 by comparison. And so many other cities that we've looked to examine the best practices for revitalizing the urban core, disinvested neighborhoods, have had redevelopment authorities at the center of those efforts. And those redevelopment authorities have been able to lead collaborative efforts with business and government to address their city's pressing issues. And so we see that as the role of the Redevelopment Authority. We have some wins and progress that we've made in the last 10 years, but indeed a lot remains to be done, and we're excited about the future. We're excited to work in partnership with the city. We appreciate the leadership of Mayor Broom in helping to revive the Redevelopment Authority and partner with the Redevelopment Authority to see that the city's concerns around blight elimination, neighborhood stabilization, and making sure that all of Baton Rouge develops in a way that it creates a quality of place that we all can be proud of. We look forward to continuing those partnerships and collaborations. I want to mention briefly some of the initiatives and projects we have underway, many of which you are familiar with. As you know, we are all anxiously awaiting the opening of the Electric Depot project. Phase 1 we expect to open in the next few months. That is anchoring Government Street and the revitalization of Mid-City, which is already underway. Really excited about that. The first phase will be an entertainment complex. There is housing, commercial, and retail space to come as well. The Entergy building is the city's first power plant, so we're excited to see this historic renovation, adaptive reuse, bringing Government Street back to life and modeling exactly what redevelopment authorities should be doing in communities. In addition, nearby, we've been engaged in planning for what we hope will be a future intercity rail between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. With the help of the Federal Rail Commission, Federal Rail Administration, and the Southern Rail Commission, we were able to do master planning for the first 2 stations, a suburban station and a station in downtown East. That also gives us an opportunity to conceptualize the types of mixed-use developments that we think will continue to anchor areas like Mid-City and in the suburban areas of Baton Rouge and help to give us a blueprint for how to structure partnerships with the private sector and other areas of government to make those plans a reality. Matt McKay mentioned the Automotive Training Center at Ardendale, and I want mention again Ardendale, our 200-acre master plan development that is anchored by the McKay Automotive Center and the Career Technical High School, which recently opened. This year, we look forward to planning for the introduction of 400 mixed income housing units in partnership with the East Baton Rouge Housing Authority. So we're excited about that, and we look forward to activity continuing in Ardendale and building on the impressive investments that have been already made there. You may also know in downtown East, the Elysian 2 apartment complex is underway. That's 100 new units to downtown East coming. That is an addition to a previous phase, the Elysian 1. Again, that is an example of the Redevelopment Authority being able to bring gap financing to play to make those projects a reality. We look forward to doing more projects, creating more opportunities for gap financing to do infill urban development, particularly with regards to meeting our affordable housing needs. We are excited to launch a new effort focused on the Plank Road corridor in North Baton Rouge. Indeed, if anything, we hear about the built environment and our challenges with development in Baton Rouge is that we have become, in essence, a tale of two cities. And so we know that that undermines civic pride. It undermines our economic development prospects. As I like to tell people, when new businesses prospect Baton Rouge, when others come to look and see if Baton Rouge is somewhere to locate and invest, they don't know Scotlandville from Santa Maria. All they see is a city that has these pressing issues and needs to rally together to solve them. And that's where we see the Redevelopment Authority as playing a key role. Our work on Plank Road in North Baton Rouge is indeed collaborative, and it involves a host of partners, including the Capital Area Transit System, including the Department of Transportation and Development, and we've also received the support from our corporate sector, including some who are here today, Exxon, and indeed General Informatics, who have all committed to provide their support to support our vision on Plank Road and in North Baton Rouge. That vision revolves around a transit-oriented development. Indeed, Plank Road is the second highest transit usage in the city parish. It has the highest concentration of zero-car households. This is the core of our workforce, who in many instances are traveling to jobs and opportunities concentrated in the southern part of the parish. We find that these neighborhoods have been neglected, and when we think about the social determinants of health, when we think about jobs and opportunities, when we think about quality of place, when we think about blight, when we think about dilapidated infrastructure, many of us think about our neglected neighborhoods in the northern part of the city. And we're excited to begin to direct resources and energies towards that. We are planning for a potential bus rapid transit installation. It would be the first in Louisiana. We are working on an application to the Federal Transit Administration, which provides matching funding for such projects. The Redevelopment Authority has land banked over 80 vacant and adjudicated parcels. We're beginning the process of analyzing the state of title on those properties so that we can bring them back to commerce. And this month we will kick off a master planning process where we will be engaging the community and many of you around what our visions for urban revitalization along that corridor and in North Baton Rouge generally can look like in the future. So we're very excited about that. Look out for more news about that. When I think about, and I'll say this to close, when I think about the trends in urban development, it is a very exciting time to be talking about cities. And I don't know if you all pay attention to the bevy of news and updates that are coming out of cities all over the country. Incredible innovations being done to address blight, to address inequality, to address poverty, to address the disconnect between where people live and where jobs are. Baton Rouge has an opportunity to teach the nation about how to address some of those issues, and that, more than anything, is the opportunity that I'm excited about. One of the things that has come into play that you may have heard about are federal opportunity zones. And while it is very early, we are still getting regulation guidance on opportunity zones. This is an unprecedented opportunity to potentially drive capital investment into disinvested neighborhoods in ways that we simply haven't seen before. When we think about what will be the catalytic sparks, that we can bring together to anchor redevelopment in our most disinvested neighborhoods. We think about how to plug the gaps in the capital stack, so to speak. How do we find capital that is willing to take the risk and support these projects? And opportunity zones give us that opportunity. So look out for more information on that and know that in partnership with the Baton Rouge Area Chamber and the Mayor's Office, we are aggressively pursuing information about that and look forward to having updates as 2019 unfolds as well. Thank you so much.
Way over yonder is Adam Knapp, President and CEO of the Baton Rouge Area Chamber, the leading economic development agency for the non-parish capital region. Adam has been with BRAC since 2008.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here, and appreciate again the Advocate for hosting this great event. I want to clean up and mention a few things that are important to talk about as we come out of 2018 and we think about where we are as an economy, and not to be repetitive of some of the important things that you've heard about. First, we're a regional organization. We work in all 9 parishes, and we continue to stress the importance of thinking about this region as a regional economy of 840,000 people. We're an investor-driven organization. What we do is on behalf of you who are our investors in the business community to drive economic development across that 9-parish area. And we were pleased last year to receive a great generational endorsement of our importance to see our long-standing building renovated after over 50 years of being in the same location and needing to have a new space, a Center for Economic Development, to represent who we are as a region and the ambition and future that we have ahead of us. And that is probably the most important change that we've seen in our organization, is a shift to being focused on economic development and very aggressive about it. So how did last year end? We saw 15 economic development projects announced last year, over 1,000 new direct jobs from those. Shintech announced mid-year a new major industrial investment in Iberville Parish, something we think is the beginning of another trend, as you've heard from Gloria and others, of other major investment opportunities in our petrochem sector if all things remain equal. A year ago, I would have sat here and told you our major challenge remains transportation, and we have not seen enough progress in investment. While 2018 represented a great year for transportation as a priority, we're $1.5 billion now in investments in the last year that we've seen either announced, voted on by the voters, or priorities of the state, between the Garvey Bond project and the widening on I-10, the Terrace Street exit that our congressman helped work on. You see the Move BR passage last year, $1.1 billion in investment on projects on our major arteries in East Baton Rouge, the beginning of progress to see solutions to some of our major challenges with traffic. We also saw the widening in Ascension Parish is under construction. Last year also in education, if you think about what's been happening and change and progress in education was a major issue. You saw a major tax plan passed by East Baton Rouge to reinvest in its facilities, which should conclude a decades-long path of reinvestment in our facilities. A $500 million investment was approved by the voters. That also came with other projects that have been concluded last year. Basis opened at Women's Hospital, and you're seeing folks moving into East Baton Rouge to attend public schools like Basis. You saw the opening of 2 campuses of IDEA, 2 charter schools from Texas that have opened here. You see this transformation happening across the education sector, both traditional and alternative sources of education. Matt mentioned the opening of the Career Technology Education Center, a center that if you have not gone to visit it, I would tell you, make time in your year this year to go walk and see it and ask its leader, Summer Dan, how you can help her. It is really, truly a dream that many others thought of a decade or so ago, to have an idea that career education can be as high a priority as traditional education. Last year, there was a commitment made to focus on crime and the challenges of crime in Baton Rouge. A fund for crime has raised $467,000 from philanthropy this past year to try and reinvest in technologies to help address crime challenges in the community, in addition to the restart of the Truce program and commitments from the public sector to improve services and delivery in crime and policing. So significant commitment between public and private focused on crime as well. We also saw greater national attention on Baton Rouge in a positive way. Over 50 national media mentions about Baton Rouge because of things like the water campus and because of places like LSU, which are drawing in national and global attention for the types of innovations and discoveries being made here in the capital region, which helps to boost the positive reputation of our region and make it more likely that folks are choosing to move here or those who are here are staying here. That's translated, all of what we've seen in economic activity is translated into one of the most positive outcomes we reported on this past year, which is median household incomes in Baton Rouge are going up. Not only are they going up, they're going up faster than the state of Louisiana, and they're going up at a faster rate than the nation. We had almost 30% increase in median household incomes over the last decade compared to the state of Louisiana at 13%. So some really positive trends because of the continued steady growth that we've seen in the economy. This year we're forecasting about 6,000 new jobs being added in the economy, about 1.3% growth. Steady as she goes growth that's translating across the entire 9-parish area.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, thanks. You all did a great job. Before we move on to questions, I thought we would take a moment to salute our other two sponsors, one of which is Entergy, and Philip's already here, and I don't know if he gets double paid for doing this, but I don't know if you want to say anything additional.
Really just very proud and pleased to be part of this and to help sponsor this program. As I mentioned, it's a rare opportunity to have such a diverse group of leaders from business and community to be in the same room and talk about the future of Louisiana and the capital region. We're very proud to be part of it, and we'll work in partnership to help this growth continue.
Okay, thank you very much. And our last sponsor is Brian Hanks of Beta Land Services.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank the advocate. I know you're probably confused, Beta, Exxon, wondering, correlation. Why would Beta want to be part of this? Mainly because we're a Louisiana company, and just like many of the members have said, we're looking for talent and people to come about. We're in a position where we're hiring people, and I can tell you, having worked in 38 states across this country, we've been involved in the last 8 years, over 100 acquisitions for our oil and gas clients, over $30 billion worth of assets. We need good, talented people, and there are none like Louisiana. Having worked in the 38 states, every time we go to a new state, our clients encourage us to hire local, which is a good sound policy. But I can tell you, no one produces like people from Louisiana. And that's why we are interested in being here, supporting this, and trying to continue to grow with the universities here in town and across the state. So we want to thank you all, and positive message, and we're going to continue to take on.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate everything our sponsors did to help us put this together. I think the next thing maybe we'll do is move to questions from the audience, and hopefully we'll figure out who. I don't think everybody needs to answer every question, but we'll figure out who the appropriate people are.
Well, thank you, the advocate, and all of you up there. Well, Peter, gosh, I have 14 questions. Is that okay? I actually have one question that could be answered 14 times. And if you had the governor standing in front of you, and you could tell him in 10 words or fewer what he needs to focus on or promote from the point of view of your industry or business, you've got your shot, and you're going to pretend he's going to take it to heart. So I wonder if each of you could take a shot at that, 10 words or fewer. What do you want to get across to the governor?
Okay, why don't we start on that end and go this way then? So.
New South Bridge. 3 words.
Okay. Oh, you got 7 words left.
That's right. I yield my 7 words to the
I would have to say continuing to marshal resources to help us address the disparities with our most disinvested neighborhoods, particularly North Baton Rouge.
I think setting up some program to engage the leadership to bring a tech thought, to the C-suite, essentially. Yeah.
And I agree with them.
There you go.
I would ask them to fix the roads,
and fix the tax structure.
Really, three things. One is education, two, infrastructure, and the third thing is to ensure we have predictability in our ITEP program. I think that certainty and predictability is absolutely necessary to continue to attract businesses.
I'm going to echo what Adam Knapp said, that we need a new bridge over the river.
Well, I think one, certainly, and Philip touched on the industrial tax exemption, has to be addressed. We're going to lose some projects if that doesn't happen. Two, I think we have to clean up our tax structure and make it more progressive moving forward.
Workforce training.
Investing in our people that were particularly related to unhealthy lifestyles, social determinants, health, and making sure that they have access to things they need to avoid unnecessary expenses associated with medical care.
And like many of the people, education, developing our talent is huge. And also as a state, making sure our communities work together.
Yeah, I'd echo what Philip and Greg said earlier in terms of creating certainty for the investment environment here, but also providing some leadership in creating that certainty down at the local level as well.
Is this a trick question, huh? Stable funding for the last 2 years doesn't mean adequate funding, and we thank the legislature as we left the Capitol in June, and we thank them for keeping us at our 1991 funding level. We can do better than that. It's time to reinvest in the next generation of our college students.
And this is a trick question, Robert, because he is my ultimate boss. And so, again, we want to continue the momentum and work with him and all our stakeholders, everyone up at this table. You know, economic development, it's a team sport, and it takes all of us working together, and that's what we want to do.
Robert, thank you. Great question.
That was a great question.
Thank you. I'm not really sure who to address this question to. My name's Scott Bird. I'm with the City of Gonzales in Ascension Parish. I heard a lot of talk about uncertainty. I've heard several references to the ITELP program. Would any of you have some input on a suggestion to the governor on how to eliminate some of the uncertainty from the ITELP program?
I guess, Scott, from an LAD perspective, this is going to fall to me somewhat. And, you know, we have had a lot of conversations with stakeholders over the last year and a half, and we certainly welcome those, and we welcome that feedback. We've had conversations with Greg and his members. And, you know, I think the governor kind of characterized the situation pretty well yesterday when he responded to a similar question at Press Club. And that was basically, you know, a lot of things that he does as governor is trying to strike the right balance between competing interests. And what I know that we have done as a state agency over the last year and a half is we tried to bring, the governors have brought more accountability to the program. Again, those job commitments, those capital investment commitments, they're in those CEA documents, those contract documents that those companies execute with us. He's given a local voice. Okay, so you at Gonzales, Ascension Parish, you'll have a local voice. And we've tried to respond to the uncertainty by addressing the term issue. And that's now with the rules that went into effect at the end of last summer, 10 years abatement at 80%. So communities know year one of operations, those assets, when they get to the tax rolls, there's going to be some dollars that start to come into the communities. You know, Robert, I know you were there. Those of us who sat through that all that HCR 11 task force work in 2016, and if you heard anything from former Lake Charles Mayor Randy Roach, when he kind of talked about this issue and talked about the boom that was going on in Lake Charles, he said it would be nice if we at the local level had some revenue sooner. The program originally, local revenues didn't come onto the tax base until year 11. At the initial change with ITEP, it was year 6, and now with the latest changes, it's year 1 that 20% of assessed value, those tax revenues are going to be coming to municipalities. So again, for locals, I think it's kind of an improvement in the program, and we continue to do what we can to make sure that our industry partners know that, again, there's stability and there's predictability here.
I think one of the things he could do, and this move, but what the governor did was he basically took away Louisiana's advantage to other states. And I'll give you an example. When you go to another state and you apply for the exemption, you've got to go through all these different hoops. You've got to go to local governments. You've got to do all that. The big incentive in Louisiana was that it was one-stop shop. You came to the state, worked out all the deals. You did the agreements on jobs and all of that, but you did it at one stop. It was a lot faster. You knew exactly what the rules are. But today, can you imagine if you had to get your homestead exemption? You're going to make a huge investment in your house, which is probably most people's largest investment, and you had to go to every single tax authority in your area before you got it. And so you're asking a business to do that, so they're worried about market conditions, timing, but you've got to go through all of that, and then you're going to end up getting rules like we have now. For example, in New Orleans, unless you're going to create a certain number of jobs at almost $100,000 a piece, don't even apply. That's what they said. That's the kind of stuff that's uncertain. So if you wanted to fix it, in my opinion, I would put it back the way it was. If you want to reduce the number of years from 10 to 8, I would do something like that. The other thing is if he has to have a 20% reduction, which I think is ridiculous, but if that's what you want to do, then basically you apply at the state level just like you did before. The locals get notice of it. They can come to the state and say, we don't think you ought to have it, but you don't have to go as an applicant to every single taxing authority. That's ridiculous.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Donna Lewis with the Baton Rouge Metro Council. We have 2 ITEP items coming up tomorrow. So I'm going to leave the ITEP question alone. I did have it on here, but I'm going to leave that one alone. So my question is about retail to Mr. Bobox. Is that really your name?
That's my real name.
I didn't know that. I just told my friend sitting next to me, I said, is that really his name? Is Bobox? Okay, so I learned something new today.
I'll let you see my driver's license.
Okay. I believe you. So my question was about vacancy in retail. Cortana Mall sits in the middle of my council district, and I've had questions and interviews about what's going to happen to the property. And it goes back to something that Chris talked about revitalization, and how do we market businesses that have closed or facilities that have shut down like that, and how do we, reverse or try to control the shift of businesses moving out of certain communities and in the northern part of the parish and moving into other areas and leaving those big boxes empty. I did have a chance to go to Jackson, Mississippi, and looked at the mall that they repurposed there as a medical mall. I think it's a great opportunity there, or could be one for Cortana Mall. It would take the pressure off my back with people calling every day. But no, would like to see, and even on Florida Boulevard, the old, I think it's Blue Cross building that's vacant, high rise. So there are many boxes along the Florida Boulevard corridor that have been vacated. A lot of it has to do with some city ordinances in terms of people having to do certain requirements to move into properties, so people don't move because of those reasons. But how can we turn the shift or turn the tide of businesses moving out, and what can we do to press the market or encourage the market to move more into some of those locations?
Well, that's a good question. A lot of good points made. The issue, the value with Cortana Mall is I think it's almost 75 acres of C2 land with infrastructure. It's at the crossroads of Florida and Airline. The buildings are in good shape. The parking lot, the infrastructure, the sewer is all in good shape. The value in Cortana and other regional malls is in repurposing, not in retail, but in education, healthcare, distribution, tech. That's what we've seen across the country, and there's a huge amount of value there. And we have had a ton of inquiries on the JCPenney box, the Sears box, and others, and none of it is retail. So I think that's a good thing. That's a positive sign for jobs, and I just think it'll be different in the next 10 years. It won't be retail, but it will be different, but it will be repurposed. It's too good of a geographic location.
Also, I don't know if Chris wants to say anything on that, answering that question.
Well, just to echo that, as I mentioned, the new Opportunity Zone legislation, we hope, will be a catalyst for investors looking into markets that they otherwise may have avoided. And that may be an opportunity, as Councilman mentioned, the Florida Boulevard corridor, right, is Baton Rouge of yesterday, and how do we bring it into Baton Rouge of the future? We have tremendous numbers of boxes. Most of them are developed in a way that is no longer favored. Acres of parking, big boxes, it simply isn't the way that when people think about smart growth and smart development, people are developing cities and thinking about development. But it creates a great opportunity for repurposing, and I think something that with the right policies in place, like opportunity zones, we could see capital flowing and catalyzing exciting, reuse opportunities.
Thank you, Chris.
Hi, I'm Francesca Shreve. I'm with Lofton Staffing Services. A lot of you have mentioned jobs and growth in the area, which of course makes me excited. But I know, Adam, you in particular, y'all have a big initiative about going to other cities like Austin and Mobile that are similar to our size, that are growing more of a culture here. And a couple of you can probably touch on this as well, but what can Baton Rouge do better to attract the talent? We have the jobs, we obviously have great companies, but the people, how do we get them here?
That's great, thank you.
Great question.
Three things that we think about a lot on this. First is retention of folks who are already here. You heard President Alexander talk about the role of LSU as a talent magnet, out-of-state talent coming here, in-state talent here. We have 49,400 students enrolled at our higher education institutions in the capital area. This is a higher education region. If anything, it's probably the anchor asset of the region's economy, north, south, east, west, community college, and on up through PhD granting institutions. And so making sure that we're very intentional as a community about helping those students find a way into the economy and being very proactive about that is a key facet of the talent strategy. The nation is in a talent war right now, and folks are choosing communities based on quality of life and the attributes of those qualities of life. So things like Topgolf or other community changes that you've seen, the references to downtown, are as much as anything about talent retention and talent attraction. When we visited Cincinnati this past year, they emphasized that redevelopment right next to their neighborhood, right next to their downtown, was a key strategy for how they wanted to compete against Nashville, who they saw having a lot more quality of life and a lot more density of their quality of life. And so you see strategies like downtown Baton Rouge and Mid-City as key parts of that talent strategy. And third is our national reputation. I mentioned the media mentions. When we surveyed a couple of years ago, Baton Rouge still is relatively poorly known, and that affects whether students want to come here, families want to move here for jobs, or companies want to move here. And so making sure that we're very aggressive and intentional about helping share the great stories about Baton Rouge businesses, job opportunities, talent stories, quality of life stories is a key part of how people choose to move here and stay here.
I think King Alexander might also have a thing to say about that.
Yeah, Brookings about 5 years ago had a report that said young people, young educated populations are going to bright lights in big cities. And that's true throughout the country, but they're also going to choices. Places that are university towns like Madison, Wisconsin, Boulder, Austin, Texas. Most people used to think it's the airport that matters the most. Well, none of those towns have airports worth much. It's the quality of life that young educated populations want to have. And we get criticized by the legislature about every session. They said, what are you doing to keep all your graduates here? And I said, what are you doing to keep all our graduates here? Our job is to create graduates that everybody wants. It's our community. And it's what we decide in our city on bike paths, sidewalks, on things that we make the community better and we improve the quality of life. The community must be the ones that keep those graduates here. Because I know our faculty and staff are producing graduates that are leaving. Many are staying, but we could do a better job at keeping them, and it is a quality of life issue.
I think we'll do one more question here, and then we have some questions from the online viewing audience.
My question is relatively considering the airport. What are your guys' ideas or thoughts on the airport and how it can be used as a major attractor for new industries and businesses.
Who wants to? Why don't you go first, Adam?
First of all, I want to just introduce those who don't know. Jerry Jones is the new head of economic development for the North Baton Rouge Economic Development District. Welcome to Baton Rouge, and welcome to your role, and good luck ahead in 2019. Two major things with the airport that we think about. One is it's got a lot of great land area. We see it has been continued to be a priority for us as we're looking for projects that need it for either logistics or for just what they offer in terms of raw land area. It also is a major anchor asset in North Baton Rouge, so it offers a lot of opportunity for job creation strategies that also benefit the neighborhoods of North Baton Rouge in and around Southern also. And so if you think about the corridor between the airport and Southern, really is a key area of focus for everybody. The second part of that is air service. We saw this past year direct air service introduced between Orlando and Austin and Baton Rouge. That has to continue. It's a major priority for a lot of the companies in the metro areas just to continue to see increased air service, which brings more folks into the airport and more visitors into North Baton Rouge. And so if we think about that as a corridor where folks are first seeing Baton Rouge, it's also about the visibility of what they are seeing and what is that experience like when they're coming in. So the airport offers a lot of different pieces of how we think about introduction of Baton Rouge to companies.
Okay. Kyle Whitfield here is our digital editor, and he has been monitoring questions that we're receiving online from the public, and so I think he'll pass on some of those.
Sure, and it's a big audience, y'all. A couple hundred people in here, I think, and we're approaching 10,000 people have tuned in at one point to the live stream here, so your voice is definitely being heard. A couple questions, guys, and the folks were kind enough to direct their questions to certain folks. So this is from Emily in Baton Rouge. I think it's mainly for you, Adam. Emily wants to know, Adam, if you pretend it's the year 2030, does Baton Rouge have a traffic loop then?
Not unless the state increases its revenue streams for infrastructure, or the federal government. I think we don't see the levels of investment in Louisiana that we see in other states. Places like South Carolina have passed increases in their revenues for transportation, and so the state's going to have to make some choices if we're going to do it. The good news is Louisiana, or I should say Baton Rouge, made that choice to make more investments, but we really want to see the state and the feds continue to increase what they're making investments in. The path we're on, if we're going to see a path to a southern loop, a bridge across the Mississippi added, it's likely it's going to be done by our metro area rather than waiting for the state or someone else to come in and help us. And so the big question before us is, will we do it for ourselves?
Thank you. Ryan in Baton Rouge, this is for Bo Box. Ryan wants to know, Bo, what has the value of downtown Baton Rouge commercial office space done over the last 10 years, both in rental rates and in sales value per square foot? And Ryan also wants to know if you can distinguish between new construction and wholesale renovations in existing space.
That's a good question, Ryan. When I first started in commercial real estate in the early to mid 90s, you couldn't shoehorn yourself into an office building anywhere. Everything was 100% occupied. The downtown rates for existing Class A product, which is all the tall multi-tenant buildings that you see, were in the $16 to $17 square foot range full service. Now they're in the 20s to low 20s, and for existing product, and for new product, the rates are approaching $30 a foot, which is very high. And Baton Rouge has, what a lot of people don't know, one of the only new Class A towers in the southeast, and that's the Shaw Building on Essen. So that's a huge benefit to the economy, and the rates there are in the mid to high 20s.
And then, Bo, sticking with you, and Chris, if we can loop you in as well. This is a question from Tim in Lafayette. Tim wants to know, is the Baton Rouge economy insulated from the drop in oil prices, or is it affected like Lafayette and Houma? And then secondly, how is this affecting commercial real estate in the greater Baton Rouge region?
That was intended for me.
Maybe Tim and Lafayette needed to clarify who.
Well, Baton Rouge historically has been insulated from oil and the boom and bust economy like they have in Lafayette, Houma, and Shreveport, and it still remains somewhat insulated. The biggest impact to cheap oil in Baton Rouge has been on the office market, primarily the Class A and Class B multi-tenant product. But I think overall, Baton Rouge is well poised because of the proximity to the river and because of cheap natural gas.
Maybe we'll help, who was it, Tim and Lafayette?
Tim and Lafayette.
Maybe we'll help Tim, because I think David might know more about that than...
Yeah, I don't know to add much more than Bo had said before. In Baton Rouge, we tend to be a lot more insulated, a lot more dependent on what happens in the chemical industry and how price shifts there impact them as a feedstock cost, as opposed to the upstream side of the business where you get that cyclicality as you get closer to the coast and you've got more activities that are going offshore.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay, good. Okay. What? Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much. This has been great. I'm supposed to announce, first of all, that if people want to see the printing press, that we are going to do tours and you should wait out by the elevators. This is, we think there are only 3 newspaper printing presses left in Louisiana. There were probably 12 or so, maybe more, back 10 or 20 years ago. It's a spectacular thing to see if you have a few minutes. And last but not least, John Georges has made it here through the Baton Rouge traffic. And,
my father said if you're late, you shouldn't be allowed to speak. But I did finish my paper route at 5 a.m., drove my furloughed daughter to the airport to fly to Washington, and thanks to Waze, I got a tour of Baton Rouge back roads. But also thanks to Kyle and our technology team, I was able to be on watching along with the 10,000 others that were watching today. And we want to thank the 14 panelists that we have, all of the civic leaders that are here, and of course this wouldn't happen without Judy and our staff at the Advocate, who really, we've been owning the Advocate for over 5 years, and we hear from business and community leaders, people like Darrell Bird, who say you need more business coverage. I know you all don't want to read all the bad news on the front page, and so Judy put this together, and really it's a new way of newspapers. Currently, we probably have 5 million people live in Louisiana or less, and the Advocate has over 30 million people that visited Louisiana through our website last year. So we have a very large voice, a very large audience. They're all people that are interested in content. They're not just interested in the crime and the negative news, but they're also interested in the good news that all of our 14 panelists have told us about. And I want to thank you. Also remind our friends in Acadiana that we do have a daily business brief that Judy started, and that's another mechanism to also advertise, but also to learn about the positive things in Louisiana. So we're very happy to be here. We're appreciative to our banks. Iberia, I think, financed this building. There was another sign on it saying financed by them, and Darrell Bird drove by and said, I want Iberia to do it, and that's how business works in Louisiana. But I do want to say that we are the biggest voice in the state to relay news, whether it's LSU or Capital News or the 3 big cities in the South, Lafayette, New Orleans, and Baton Rouge. And we hope that we find our way. We're beating national odds in success of our newspaper. We're outdoing our peers, and that's largely due to the continued support of our community, our business leaders, and of course the good work that Peter and Judy and the editorial staff do for everyone in the community. So I want to thank everyone for giving us their time today and continually supporting us. And hopefully we'll continue these programs. There's a bigger event in a bigger room than this, which will have a larger audience with Drew Brees. I don't know how she pulled it off, but so he's now the one-time Super Bowl champion, but hopefully in May when he comes to Baton Rouge, he'll be the 2-time Super Bowl champion. So thank you all for coming, and appreciate you all being here on time. I know you all live west of the interstate, and I'm all for the loop. One other note is I want to say is that the Advocate has taken positions to support the incentives for ExxonMobil, which, these type of things, get a lot of coverage both ways, but we also supported the incentives for the infrastructure that Mayor Broom supported and the business community here. So we are taking positions that we think will help Baton Rouge continue to grow and prosper. I just want to make that point. Thank you.
Well, y'all have been a great panel, and thank you to John. I don't think people, if you travel around and see the state of the newspaper business, I don't think people here fully appreciate the benefits of local ownership. Most newspapers are owned by big chains who, are run out of places, New York or Washington, and they don't care about their communities. And, having local owners who care about Louisiana is really a benefit for us. Anyhow, y'all have been a great panel, and y'all have been a great audience, and we're going to do this again next year, and maybe we'll get Drew Brees. Who knows?